は、OK。さて深夜だけど、少し勉強を始めます。教育、つけてるけど、もしら覚えてるか。4週の SS9 をやりましょう。モジュール3。コーディング・ザ・スタティック・レストランサイト。
Welcome to Module 3. This module is a real journey where we will code a real website for a real client from scratch, and you will get to sit right next to me as I go through this process. We'll start with going over some tips on how to work with your client and how to extract requirements for your project. Then we will dive into our main topic, coding the website. In the previous module, we only briefly introduced Twitter Bootstrap CSS framework. In this module, we will be learning the Bootstrap framework as we code this real website, and we'll finish off the module with testing our completed website on a mobile phone. Pretty exciting stuff. See you in the module.
なるほど。コメンテッドブックス。See recommend books here. つまり、参考書は紹介しますか。バイオンアマゾン。まあ、自分のところであってくれてさ。J クリはあんまり使うしね。とりあえずここはスキップして。
Okay, so now we're ready to embark on our adventure of creating a real site for a real client. In my case, I approached a local restaurant called David Chu's China Bistro, and we're going to be building a restaurant website for them. Now, before we go and visit with the client, let's go over some rules and just basic ideas so you're not completely in the dark. Now, obviously, this is not going to be a comprehensive business strategies or comprehensive how to deal with clients, but some basic ground rules just so we understand where we're coming from. And the first concept that you need to remember is that most clients have no idea what they want. It's not that they're ignorant. In fact, they're very smart about their own business, but they certainly usually have no idea as to what they want on the website and how the whole thing works. So it's really your job to ask questions, and most importantly, the right questions to help the client figure out what it is that they want and kind of communicate that back to you. A great way of doing it is if you bring some website examples of similar businesses that already have websites and have the client react to those websites. So you could show them a couple of websites and see, do you like this? Do you like that? What do you like about this? What do you not like about that? Once you get enough of these examples in front of their eyes, you'll start getting a feeling as to what they will be satisfied with, but also what they actually are looking for a website and their own product. Now, as a general rule, every single client is going to want to put a lot of information on the page. And they want a lot of information about their business. And it makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of things that you should know as a customer about their business. A lot of it is very important. And they'll tell you that this is also important. I want this very much, in bold and upfront. And this is also important, but I want it on the side. And some more things are important. And this is important. And that's important. It's a very important reminder. It's all going to be very important. And that's a pretty usual approach of clients, and it's perfectly human. The only problem is that when everything is important, nothing is really important. So again, it's your job really to encourage the client to follow a very simple rule. Less is more, right? The less information you put up, the more impact that information will get. So point is, you should encourage your client not to cram information on the website. In fact, what you should try to help the client do is identify that crucial information, that most important information that has the most punch to it, and not just cram every information there is to know about the business. Another quick tip I would love to share with you is the fact that you should always try to find a way for the client to invest in the project. And this is especially true if you're doing this for free just to build up your portfolio. The client needs to feel like they have some skin in the game as well. If they don't, what is going to end up happening is that you're going to be some side project that they're really not going to pay much attention to, and you're going to spend and invest all this time of your own and not necessarily get much of cooperation from their side. So have them do something. Even if you're doing this for free, have them commit at least to pay for product photography, if that makes sense, or have them commit to provide products that you need, in order to demo it, or maybe, if you find your own photographer that's willing to do this for free, which I'm going to talk to in a minute about, at least they will provide the product and they will have some actual real investment, some money investment in the game, even if it's not super huge in amount, but as long as they actually are spending something, they have at least a little bit of an investment that they'll want to take the entire project much more seriously. Another important rule is make sure that you have the client designate one person responsible for decisions. If you don't, what's going to happen is that this person is going to tell you, no, really what we want is this way, and the other person in the business is going to tell you, we want something else differently here. If you have one person, you could always tell the other people that are suggesting things that it's a great suggestion, and I'm responsible to this particular one person, and I'll bring that suggestion to that person, and if that person, approves, I'll be more than happy to incorporate it. Which brings me to another point. Limit the number of revisions up front. Make sure you communicate to the client up front, have them even sign a contract, have them sign that this is the number of revisions that I'm willing to make. Because obviously, the clients can go on forever and ever and ever, and your time is limited. Now, if it's a paying job, don't limit revisions, out of hand, but limit the number of free revisions. If you say, I will, revise the site, within reason, not completely turn it upside down, but within reason, I'll revise it up to like 3 times for free. And from that on, I'll have to charge you per hour. You'll figure out how you want to structure it. Now, for really comprehensive as to what to ask your client, I highly suggest you Google Web Development Client Questionnaire, and you will see a whole bunch of resources that you could draw from to really find out how to ask these questions and what kind of answers to look for, just to learn a little bit about what this interaction is like if you've never done this before yourself. Now, another quick tip I'd like to share with you is you should try to involve others if you need it. So for example, if you're not a super duper graphic designer and we're really concentrating on coding things, not really designing per se, you could contact the local college and see if a graphic designer student wants to join you and provide some free design services and put that on their resume. You'll get to do the coding, they'll get to do the design, and so on. If makes sense for your website that you're trying to create, that you need some photography, like photography of products, you could do the same thing. You could find a photographer that is, a young budding photographer that is willing to do things for free, as long as obviously he's mentioned and credited, and he's able to put that on his resume, his or her resume. And that way you'll be able to collect a couple of professional resources that you won't feel like you have to do everything by yourself in order to produce something that really looks pretty professional. Now, in my case, for the David Chu's China's Bistro, I got pretty lucky because my wife happens to be a graphic designer, so she will help me with the design, at least preliminary design of a layout of the site. And my son happens to be a photographer, or at least a starting photographer, and he is more than willing to provide the food photography service. Now, I'll follow my own advice. I will still have the restaurant owner invest in this project. And the way they will invest is they agree to provide every single item on the menu to provide for us just so we could take proper pictures of those items. And that's a pretty hefty investment because they have to keep the staff after hours and cook basically every single item on the menu and provide it for us. So it's hours and hours of their work, but it's something that shows the client is involved and the client is committed. And that's very important. Now, another thing is definitely don't go into the meeting with the client without first finding out what does the client have right now? What kind of website do they have? What information is being displayed? Just to learn a little bit about the business. In my case, the David Chu's China Bistro has the following website. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, so here's the site. It's clearly put up on some free service of some, maybe it's not free, but right off of their phone number. That's their domain name. And you can see all it is a picture, actually. If we take a look, it looks like, yeah, it's a picture. It's a picture of their menu. And I can see right off the bat that they have different categories in their menu, which is, I guess, pretty standard. But the website is definitely pretty horrible in terms of in terms of user experience, and certainly doesn't show you the business in all its glory. So we're going to go ahead and try to fix that. So let's summarize. First of all, don't forget to bring some examples of other websites to help your client figure out what they want. It's very often that the clients really don't understand what it is they want themselves, and giving them some examples will help generate a discussion and kind of a direction as to where they really want to go. Also, encourage your client to use less information. It's a knee-jerk reaction, just about everybody who is not in the industry, to try to cram as much information as possible, and it's almost always the wrong way to go. It's better to have less and more potent information to their customers than have tons of information where everything gets lost. Figure out a way that your client should invest in the project, whether they pay you a little bit, whether they upfront commit to paying for something, whether it's photography or providing their product, but it's got to be something that they have, as they call, skin in the game, so they will take this project seriously as well. This is especially true if you're doing this for free just to kind of build up your portfolio. Very important thing to have is that the client should designate one person as the decider of what things to have in the website or what not things to have in the website, and just really everything about the project. If you have more than one person, chaos will start, and you're going to spend way too much time dealing with things that have nothing to do with coding and nothing to do with the website, but just managing these relationships that really shouldn't be there to begin with. Just have the client designate one person to be the final decider. Also, limit the number of revisions. Don't let the client keep constantly revising. So if you're doing this for free, certainly limit it to something reasonable like 3 times. But if you're doing it for pay, then limit it to 3 times for free, and then anything additional the client will actually have to pay for. And another thing is involve others to help you produce a great product. It's rare to have one person kind of have it or know it all, do the photography, do the product photography, do the layouts and designs. Involve somebody else and have them help you, and you'll get to concentrate on the coding. Next, let's go visit the actual restaurant, meet the owner, and figure out what they want for a website. What does that mean? Field trip! Okay, we're ready to go on our field trip. We will meet Amy, the owner of the restaurant. We will be creating a website for, get a sense of what she wants in a website, and maybe even get lucky and interview some customers to get a unique customer perspective about the restaurant. Let's go. when you get right down to it, this meeting is all about setting expectations. Whether it's expectations about what the client is expecting from us or our expectations of what the client is going to provide. So if we can achieve that of communicating those expectations very clearly, we've done our job. Seriously, how many computer science courses do you have that take you on a field trip, huh? Taking your job, Guy Fieri.
I come to this restaurant very often, usually about once a month or twice a month.
I would come here once a month with my wife.
I always enjoy the atmosphere and I enjoy the service.
I like the fact that it's kosher and the fact that the food is very good all the time and consistently good. So that's why I like to come to this restaurant.
You know, me personally, I always eat sesame chicken. That's my favorite dish.
And I can also, when I don't finish, which is ample portions, I can take home. It tastes good. I mean, that's why I like it. It's the type of thing which I expect a good Chinese dish to have.
I love the chicken itself. I just love the way it's made. I enjoy it. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Johns Hopkins Whiting School of Engineering?
Of course.
Do you think it's a good school?
It's absolutely a good school.
The food is exceptional, and I know it's Zagat rated, so I can always trust that the food is going to be fresh and ready to eat, and I always enjoy it.
Joseph Rosenblatt, class of 1964, Hopkins.
Oh, so you actually went to Hopkins?
Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
Ready for our meeting?
Sure, yes.
So if you had to, do a little self-criticism, is there anything about the restaurant you would want to improve?
Yes, to get a better website.
Get a better website. That's a very good answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I did was I prepared a few websites for you to look at. And what I want you to do is I pulled them up on this iPad here. What I want you to do is take a look at them and let me know. These are all sites of Chinese restaurants. And take a look and see if you like any of them. And, if you want your website to be, kind of similar or something like that.
Sure.
And you could scroll back and forth over here and take a look. And if you do like it, like what do you like about it? What appeals to you about that website? Or what doesn't? What do you not want it on that website? What do you like about it?
The colors.
You like the colors? You like the colors?
Very clear,
You like the fact that it's clean, it's looking very clean, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the item are very user-friendly.
User-friendly, looks very user-friendly to you? Okay, so this site looks very user-friendly to you, okay. And it looks clean and
Very practical.
very practical, okay. Very good, very good. So this is the type of website you like. Okay, that's good. Is this something like, obviously we're not going to do these colors for your website because your website is going to be more with the colors of the
course,
restaurant.
I understand.
But you like this setup, right?
Yes.
So we're going to have some decisions to make as we go and develop the website. Where to put things, something like that. Can you designate one person who's going to be responsible for all decisions regarding this project? And who would that person be?
It'll be me.
It'd be you, so you'll be deciding. So and you'll be pretty much available, so we could call you, and if there's something going on that, it shouldn't be like a
Yeah,
2-week
that's
type of, wait before we hear of an answer if we need something for a decision.
Yeah,
So you'll be able to
no
decide it.
problem.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, very good. So that we could do that. So let me explain to you like a couple of words what the process is going to be like. Basically, we're going to create a mock-up of the website, not the real website, just a mock-up, like a drawing of the website. And we're going to show it to you and basically see if you approve the way it's going. And what we'll give you three revisions, three times that you could update the thing and say, I want something different a little bit. And after that, then you will try to finalize it. So you're okay with that? You're okay with that type of setup? Okay, great. Okay. You saw the pictures on that website and you really like the fact that there's pictures on there, right?
Yes.
So pictures that, usually, especially on a website like this, are very important. Would you be able to commit to providing the entire menu of the restaurant so we could come and bring a photographer and actually take a picture of every single item in the menu? Would you be okay with doing that?
Yeah, as long as still be kosher menu, it's fine.
So it's still a kosher menu. You'll still be kosher menu, yes. Absolutely. Okay, so very good. So we'll bring a photographer in, and then you will basically have to cook every single item in the menu, and we'll bring it out, and the photographer will take a
Sure.
picture of it.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, excellent. Very good. So this is a kosher restaurant, is that correct?
Yeah,
Kosher
that
restaurant?
kosher.
And so what does that, in terms of cooking and in terms of dealing with stuff, what does that mean for you?
We have a mashgiach here.
Do you have you're basically somebody who's a supervisor.
Yeah. Nowadays, people start, making a lot of ingredients with a kosher, logo. That means we have a lot of choices.
So we spoke to quite a number of customers that you have here, and not everybody wanted to be on camera, but everybody loves your food.
Thank you.
Do you like Chinese food yourself?
Of course.
Do you eat all the Chinese food a lot?
Of course.
Oh, really? Okay. So you're not sick of it? So you're not sick of it?
No, not at all.
No, so you
No,
eat it
no,
every
no.
day, even though you see it every day in the restaurant, you're not sick of it?
Yeah. No, not at all.
Okay,
You will
great.
never get tired of Chinese food.
This restaurant is actually pretty cozy, and it's small,
Thank you.
but at the same time, it feels kind of cozy. It's relaxing, right? Is
Thank
that
you.
kind of the feel you're trying to go for
Yeah.
on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're ready to leave the restaurant and start designing and coding our website. But before we do, one of the most important rules is don't ever code on an empty stomach. Oh, I know you're really anxious to start coding the website, but I'm a little busy, so I'll be right back. We'll do the website after this. Forgot about what my line was.
I'm gonna put this in Google first. Okay, your line was, what's it
I don't know
called?
why I got into computers. Food tasting seems like a much better job. Anyway. Okay, one second. Like so, you do it like this? It's hard to do it this way.
It's 2 fingers.
2 fingers.
Instead of 10 fingers.
2 fingers and 10 fingers?
Yes. Okay.
Just hold it with 2 fingers.
Yeah.
Like this? This is very hard.
Put the index finger here, in the middle.
Put the middle finger in between
Yeah,
those 2 fingers? Like this?
Yeah. And then try to.
And then you have to grab it like that?
Yeah, exactly. You're good. Yeah. Oh,
Let me ask you a question. Do you have a fork?
this is much better than a fork.
This is much better than a fork?
Can you pick up a rice with a fork?
No, but
Can
I can
you?
do it with a spoon.
See, I can pick up rice with a chopstick.
You can pick up rice with a chopstick. Let's see it. Wow. That's some skill.
Yes,
Let's see if I can do it. I'm going to pick up a carrot. It's much bigger
Much
than
better. Good job.
Oh, wow. Look
There
at
you
this.
go.
Look at this. I'm learning. This is incredible. Okay. Next, I'm going to do the rice. Ready?
Good.
Oh, my goodness.
Good job.
At the
See?
same time, I have to eat this, right? So it's very
Yeah.
hard to balance and eat at the same time.
Eat it.
Takes some skill.
Good job. There you go.
Tastes much better from the
See?
chopsticks.
You're a good student.
This course will be updated with the new course which will contain all latest technologies. Be noted in the link up. また帰りますよって。次の項目です。
Okay, so now we're back from the restaurant, and I really feel that I was able to get a taste of this project up close and personal. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to go over our design overview, and this is a combination of work that the graphic designer, i.e. my wife, did for us, and we're going to see how this is going to evolve into a real website. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So when you first starting to design a website, the worst thing that you could possibly do is start coding right away. You don't want to do that. You don't want to design a website coding it at the same time. What you do want to do is you want to have some mock-ups, some layout mock-ups that you present to the client that take little to no time to design and to put together and present to the client. And once they approve and you know exactly what you're coding and what you're trying to strive for, then you turn to the code editor and you start coding the website. So what we're going to do is going to design the mock-ups first. So the tool we're going to use is called balsamic.com. It's a Balsamic mockup tool, and it lets us put together mockups for websites, for other different UIs very, very quickly. And I'll show you the cool part about it in a minute. So let's go ahead and switch to Balsamic mockup. I'll provide you the link to them in the resources. So here's our Balsamic mockup, and we finished the website layout already with the help of the graphic designer, i.e. my wife. And before we move on to actually design, let me just say a couple of words about this tool. This tool is not free, but it's really not that expensive. However, what's really cool about this tool, besides for the fact that it has components for different platforms that you're able to kind of natively lay them out, you also have integration of components from Bootstrap, which is exactly what we're going to use, so it's really convenient. But I think one of the coolest features of this tool for us as coders is that all these mockups are based upon a file that is really nothing more than HTML looking like text file. It means that you could check things into a code repository, and when things get updated, it's just the text that gets updated. So unlike, images and things that really are impossible to deal with inside repositories, and there's no way to tell what the difference is because it's not text, it's binary. This is all text-based, and therefore you could take and create a difference between what was checked into the repository yesterday versus today versus, is going to be tomorrow. And it's a huge advantage when you're working, especially within a team and in a professional environment. Okay, so let's take a look at our website here, things that really are versus today versus, is going to be tomorrow. And it's a huge advantage when you're working, especially within a team and in a professional environment. Okay, so let's take a look at our website here, the mockup of the website. So the mockup it's going to have a logo with some text underneath, and this is going to be basically our menu, and I'm not sure 100% yet if that's what the menu items will be. Definitely there will be a menu item, right? The menu for the food menu that we're going to have. And there's the phone number with a little thing we deliver. Now this big area is what's planned for this is some kind of a picture of the inside of the restaurant. It's going to be what's called a Jumbotron in Bootstrap. So when the user first gets in here, he sees a very nice picture of the restaurant and it's inviting and they want to kind of proceed. What's going to be underneath is 3 giant buttons: menu, specials, and a map. And it's self-explanatory what it stands for. And these are kind of the key things that we want the user of this website to see right away, which is, they want to see the menu, perhaps specials, and certainly where this is located. At the bottom, we're going to have hours, some bunch of quotes or a couple of quotes about the restaurant, and we're going to have the actual address of the restaurant as well. Now remember, this is going to be a responsive website, so we need to design what the site will look like when the browser page gets a little more narrow. So the first one is going to be a tablet. So what happens when you're in a tablet? Well, not much happens when you're in a tablet in this particular design, because we're just going to squeeze different items as opposed to before that's going to kind of spread out. And now we're just going to squeeze them a little bit more and still have the Jumbotron and still have the specials. They might be a little bit squeezed in terms of size, and everything else basically stays the same. Now, however, when we jump to going to a mobile page, that becomes very different. Now we're not going to have these buttons anymore. We're going to have a kind of a menu where the user can click and the menu will slide down, which is a very common feature. You also notice that we moved the telephone number in the middle of the page now, because supposedly on the mobile web page, right, you would want to have the phone number just a click away or a tap away, and we're going to have this phone number tappable such that they can make a phone call straight from the page, or it will at least trigger their phone to try to call the restaurant. And we'll still have the Jumbotron, but it's going to be a much smaller one because we don't want to overwhelm the phone and the cell network. We don't want it to be too slow. And you can see here that now this thing is a little bit rearranged. We have the menu and the specials, but the map is now on the bottom of those two things. So we're going to have to figure out how to have the map automatically slide underneath of that. And we're still going to have some testimonials about the restaurant, the hours, and the address. Now, that's really not all we need to design. We also need to design another page, and we know up front we're going to have this menu categories page. Well, the menu categories page, and this is showing us the full one, is going to basically have a bunch of different things, and here it looks like we're going to have 6 menu categories across, and it's basically going to continue until we run out of these menu categories. So that's basically what we're going to have. We're not going to have a Jumbotron here because at this point they're already a little bit deeper into the website. And the other one is a menu list. So we're going to have, supposedly they will click on one of the menu categories and they will see every item inside that menu category. And this is basically what we have. So we're going to have a couple of items across with their name, with their description, and we're also going to have a ID for every single item. And that ID, if you look, if you remember, let me go back to the restaurant, David Chu's China Bistro. And that ID really comes from right here. Every menu item has this ID that is already on their menu, so we don't want to switch that back and forth. We want to keep that set so the menu will correspond to something that's on the website. Okay, so that's our layout. Next, let's take a look at some design that has already some colors and some more concrete layout. So here's what our designer came up with, and this is just basic idea, and this is what you're usually going to get back from a designer. You're going to get some kind of a color scheme, some photography, and the photography is not from this particular restaurant. It's just some stock photography that you can certainly use in order to kind of enhance the site to see what it looks like. And here's our menu again. This is not the menu from this particular restaurant, or not the picture from the particular restaurant, but actually the map is. So this is what we're going for. And Designer will typically provide for you the hexadecimal color values for different components within your website, and it will also tell you which fonts that they used inside this design. Now, depending on your budget, and if you're trying to do things for free, or certainly if you're trying to find free resources, I will recommend up front that you try to stick with Google Fonts. There's a website, google.com/fonts, and which we'll be using for our website ourselves. So if you can ask your designer to stick to the fonts that are available on that website, it will make your job down the line a little bit easier. Now, don't worry about making minor mistakes, at least with the color scheme and other things like that. For example, we messed up on this site by not providing the designer the photography up front because we just couldn't. We didn't really arrange it that way. We only did the photography after the design was produced, which was not really under our control simply because that's the way the schedules worked out. But when we started comparing the photos that we were able to get from the food photography, we realized that the color scheme, especially for this color right here, the reddish color, is really the wrong one. So we had two choices. We could colorize every single picture that we took with this red, and you were able to do something like this in Photoshop, or just adjust our color, this particular color, slightly so that it will fit the color scheme that the restaurant actually presents in real life. And in this case, our color scheme kind of went close together with the color of the napkins in the restaurant. Now, what tool do you use to design this? Well, professional designers usually use Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, to design this, but you don't really have to use something so fancy. You can use something as simple as PowerPoint or any drawing tool, because the idea here is really not to come up with a complete 100% design. The idea here is really to come up with enough detail so when you code, you will know what you're trying to achieve. And this is what basically this is about. So we have our mockups, we have our design with the colors and the fonts. It's time to start coding the website. Let's do it.
いかに色やなんかそういうのを今日決めるかっていうのが大事ってことなんだけど。はいし。
Okay, before we begin, let me go over some ground rules, and we'll also give a very quick overview of our development environment setup. First of all, remember that it's a video, so use it like one. So if you feel like I'm going too fast, pause it and rewind it a bit if you want to hear something again. If it's too slow, feel free to increase the playback speed and make me sound like a chipmunk. So go ahead and try to use the video for what it's good for, which is adjusting to your own pace. Now remember that source code is available. So if you miss something or you want to look something up later, it's there for you. So don't have to worry about missing something on the screen. The source code is definitely 100% will be available to you, even though it's going to be a real commercial website. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to build up the site piece by piece, which will mean that the current lectures before folder will contain the previous lectures after content as a starting point. That way you could jump into any lecture and see where we started and see kind of where we ended as well, and that keeps going. Now, certain things will have to be done off screen to save time. So sometimes I also have times when I just need to pause and think for a second where we're going next. I certainly don't think you want to sit there and wait with me while I think. So certain things will have to be paused, done off screen, and then put back on. But certainly once I put it on screen, I will go ahead and go over it and explain it. So to avoid having you watch me type, which could be pretty boring, I will go ahead and try to do some things off screen and then we'll just explain them as we go along. But some on-screen typing won't be able to be avoided anyway. Another thing is, I would love to have recorded both screens. I usually try to, when I develop, have two monitors in front of me. That way, especially if we use something like browser sync, which we're going to go over in a minute, it's so much easier to have a code editor in one screen or one monitor, and then the display or the browser in another monitor. That way, whenever you change something in your code, it immediately appears on your monitor. However, this is unfortunately a luxury we can't have since there's only a one screen type of video. On top of which, I can't even put both the browser and the code editor in the same window like I did before, since we're going to need to actually code things as they stretch. So when the browser gets really big, it's going to be a different layout than when the browser is half size, simply because my screen is zoomed in so you could see everything much better. So unfortunately, we will have to be switching a lot between the coder editor and the browser screens. So I apologize for that, but there's nothing I could do without having you not be able to see very well as to what I type. Okay, so let's jump into the code editor and see what our starting point is. Okay, so I'm right now in my terminal window, and if I do pwd, which gives us the current directory I'm in, you'll see that I'm in examples lecture 29 before folder. And if we do NLS on it, you'll see that I have CSS, fonts, JS folder, and a starter index.html. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start using browser sync. And the way you want to do it is if you actually go up one folder and do an ls, you'll see a before and after. And we're going to be kind of living in the after all the time. So let's go back to after, because that's what we're going to be developing. And this is the place where we want to actually start up our browser sync. So whenever we edit anything, this is going to automatically appear in the browser. So let's go ahead, let me recall my browser sync command, and we'll go over it. So hopefully in the welcome videos, I went over how to install browser sync, and if you haven't done that, please go back to that video and go through how to install it. You will need to install Node.js, for example, and so on. Go ahead and review those videos. So browser sync is a command, browser-sync. We're going to say start. We're going to start the browser sync. It's going to be a server for us. In other words, browser sync will itself serve our website from the directory that we're in, which is right now in the lecture 29 after directory. And we're also going to say -- directory, which basically tells browser sync to go ahead and list the directory structure instead of trying to serve up a file. So it will go ahead and show us all these files as the starting point. And the last thing is I want to see which files do I need to watch for modification so that the browser sync can go ahead and reload my page automatically and immediately the second any of those files that match this criteria change. In this case, I'll just put star because I want any files in this directory that change to immediately be reloaded in the browser. So I'll go ahead and press enter and start my browser and go ahead. You'll see that I'm now in the browser. It jumped me straight to it. And let's actually go back to take a look. What it's telling me that here are my access URLs, and it went ahead and jumped me straight to this page. But if you take a look here, there's another page called HTTP localhost with a different port, 3001. And that's a UI of the browser sync, which I haven't showed you before. So let's go ahead and jump into that UI. And you'll see that's a whole configuration UI for our browser sync. And I encourage you to go ahead and explore it a little bit. Meanwhile, this is our directory right here. And if we click on this, we really are going to see absolutely nothing because in our code, we have absolutely nothing so far. So let's go to our code. So what we have here is a standard Bootstrap starter page. And if you notice, we kind of dropped support for Internet Explorer 9. So you don't see the shims here, and you don't see that we are using jQuery 1 point something. We're actually using jQuery 2.1.4. So we're dropping support for IE9. Hopefully, the very, very little number of people that still have it won't even be on the site at all. So we don't want to support that. So the only thing we really have here is the standard setup of the meta tags, and we put our title as David Choose China Bistro. That's the restaurant name. And the only thing we want to do here is we want to try to at least set up, the first thing is our styles.css. If we go to CSS folder, and there's a whole bunch of files here we really don't need. We really just need the minified bootstrap.min.css, and that is in fact what we're including right here. But just for reference, if we wanted to look into them later, I left all of them here. We'll probably erase them before we deploy. And what's important is that you see styles.css that's sitting right in this folder, and we'll go ahead and open that file. So the first thing we want to do here is set up some global styles that the entire page and really across all pages will be true. So we'll do that using body, and we'll set up, first of all, the font size. We'll set up a standard font size. We'll go ahead and use it 16 pixels. We'll set up the color, and the color will be FFF. And that will give us white. So it means any text that we have is going to be white. And the background color that we'll set up is going to be, and this is something that we actually have to look at our design. So let's take a look here. So the design of the background color was this particular reddish color, but what we're going to do instead is use 61122F, and that's going to match kind of the napkin style and the different restaurant paraphernalia that we have seen in the restaurant. So we'll go ahead and use 61122F, and we'll give it a semicolon. So now if we go ahead and look at our browser, and for some reason didn't refresh. Here we go. Now it's refreshed again. Should have refreshed automatically. I'm not really sure what happened. We see now we have this kind of maroon color in the background. So that's our background. And the last thing we want to do is take a look as to the general font. And the general font here, it says Oxygen. Well, let's go ahead and put the general font. So font family, and we'll say Oxygen. And this is really not going to work. And let's take a look here, and we'll just go ahead and put a simple paragraph here, and we'll say, hello, world. And this is not going to work, the hello world. And the reason it's not going to work is because we don't really have Oxygen on my machine as a font. Now, it's very possible that I actually imported it because this looks very close to what Oxygen actually looks like. So it's possible that I imported it onto my machine. But on regular machines, you're not going to have this font. So how do we get this font? Well, the way we get this font is we could go to google.com/fonts and search for this Oxygen font. And you'll see the first one is Oxygen. The second one is called Oxygen Mono, so that's a different one. And the way to get that font into our page is to go to this button right here that says Quick Use. And we'll go ahead and click that. And it asks us, well, what kind of fonts? They want just normal, they want the light and the bold. We're going to go ahead and take both, and you can see that Google is telling you also how much of a load on the page is it going to give you. So sometimes these fonts have lots of different options, and you could load it so much that it'll go into red, and that which will mean that every page will download a lot of different kind of things about this font that will make the page load slower. We don't want that, but we certainly are okay since it's sitting in the green. Now, if we scroll back down a little bit here, you'll see that here's a code to add to your website. Well, it seems pretty simple. We'll go ahead and select that, and we'll go ahead and copy. We'll go back to our page, and we just need to paste this link right here. And now our page has that font. The only thing is, if you go back to the page, it tells you here's actually how you should specify it. We'll go ahead and use that too. We'll copy that. We'll go back to our code editor, and we'll replace this font family with what they tell us to specify it as, which is this line, Oxygen and sans serif, in case Oxygen is not available, which it should be, now that we've imported it from Google. So now we could go to our web page. Let's go ahead and take a look at our web page. I will refresh just in case. Yeah, and the font basically probably wasn't on my machine because it's exactly the same font that's showing up. So let's go back to the code editor. We'll go ahead and erase this. We don't need that. And we're basically ready to go. So now we've set up our background color, our default font size, and we even imported a font from Google Fonts. We're good to go, and we're ready to move on to the next thing, which is going to be the header of our website.
まずはベースカラーとフォントを決める。フォントは Google フォントか。さてこと。When first link a website project, it's best to jump coding the website as soon as possible. Once you get the preview into short time to client to see into the problem. No. まずプロトタイプですよ。モックアップの。Mock-up version of the website must be an extra replica of what you are going to build in its まあ、モックアップを見せてやりますよねっていうのは、もう一回。Mock-up version of the website must be an extra そっか、レプリカじゃないんだ。ファンのイメージなんだよね。こんな感じという。Okay. When first starting the website project, it's best to jump to coding the website as soon as possible. Once you generate the views in HTML, you tend to collect. これは当然。False. Mock-up presentation of the website must be an exact replica of what you are going to use. でもイメージだからそのからパロス。ここは、後にするかな。1週目は、なんとか終わったから今3週目。3週目はナビゲーションが、うわ、抜けてる。絶対間に合わねえ。さて。誰だし、次は別のやつをやるんだよ。一も抜けてるのからね。英語もやらんといいか。うわぁ、3週目がこんなに遅れてる。マイペースでいきましょう。3週目。テストまでやって。E メールグリーティングスなんとか。E メールエスケットパート2から。
In the last lesson, you learned how to write the subject line, the greeting, and the closing in an email. You also learned some guidelines to use email effectively and professionally. In this lesson, we'll look at tone. Tone is very important in business communication because if you don't get it right, you might sound rude and unprofessional. Tone is made up of how formal or informal you are and how direct or indirect you are. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to distinguish between formal and informal language, distinguish between direct and indirect language, and choose the appropriate tone based on the relationship, the context, and the request.
行きましょう。
Let's start by looking at formality. To help us decide how formal to be, we have to ask ourselves the question, who am I writing to? We can't really say there's an absolute formal style and an absolute informal style, so it might be better to think of a line between very formal and very informal with neutral somewhere in between. As long as we choose somewhere approximately along the line that's appropriate for the situation, we should be okay. Think about these situations where you're writing to someone. Would you be more formal or more informal or just neutral?
いや、E メールなんだから普通はもうインフォーマルでしょう。でなかったら普通手紙をつく。It's probably better to use a little more formal language in this situation. I never met. それでもそうなるのか。Choose which formality you would use in this situation. ただ、You are writing to someone you have never met. まだ会ったことのない人にはフォーマルの方がいいと。まあ当然もインフォーマル。同僚にだからそんな堅苦しくメールは書かない方がいいってことね。You are writing the sheet of your large. まあ一応 C 語だしな。まあフォーマルで。まあ上の人だからね。You are writing to your team leader. チームリーダーレベルな顔見知りでやったある程度インフォーマルの方がいい。Even though this person is the leader of a team, the distance between you is not great. So my informal like with colleague is fine in US business class. You are writing someone you met at this event last month. こう落ちてやってみたい気がするが。何もインフォーマルかな。一回会ったぐらいだとフォーマルの方が安全な気がするけど、あえて親しげに。わかりました。ニュートラルをやれと。ニュートラル消えてるんだけですけど。まあ、はじめ。You are writing to someone working a partner company in a different country. これもニュートラルかな。The person might be used to more formal or informal style communication in his culture. If you don't know, it's preferred to use the neutral style.
So now you know that the relationship between the writer and the reader helps us to decide whether to be formal or informal. But how do we make our writing formal or informal? Read the following 3 emails and decide which one is formal, which one is neutral, and which is informal.
どれがいいDear Mr. Dawson, I am writing regarding. もう。I am writing regarding a project meeting that is scheduled. For Tuesday, we will be required to provide more details about the issue we discussed. It will be うわ、すげえ、フォーマル。もう、これ、フォーマル決まってるじゃないですか。次、email B。あら、I am writing about the project meeting on Tuesday. Are we supposed to give more details about the things we talked about in the last meeting? I'd best I'd great if you could let us know as soon as possible. Thank you best. インフォーマルですね。もしかしてこれでニュートラルなのはい、I was poised a meeting on Tuesday. We're going to have to give more info about stuff we chatted about at the last one. Great if you could tell us your SFTs. うわ、インフォーマルってこのレベルなのか。
What helped you decide?
やってみて。
You probably looked at how the words were different, right? Well, that is one way we can change the formality. We change the vocabulary.
This end part 1 is formality. Go to next video formality. Part 2. Part 続き。
Let's look at some examples. Which word seems more formal?
これはもうリガーディングでしょう。
Regarding is more formal. About is a very common word in English. Regarding is less common, but it can mean about. English has a large vocabulary, and we often have more than one word with a similar meaning. Sometimes one of the words is more formal. If you're interested in why one word is more formal than another, it's basically because English is made up of vocabulary from German and French, Latin. The words of French-Latin origin are more formal than those of German origin. Regarding is of French origin, and about is of German origin. So how about this example? Which one is more formal?
Provide. Give は普通に話すよ。伝えると提供するって感じだよね。
Provide sounds more formal than give. Now let's look at these three words. Which one sounds the most informal?
インフォーマルどっちだろうこのパターンからそうスタッフっぽいけど。
Right. The word stuff is very informal. To sound more formal, use another verb instead of a phrasal verb. In this example, you can see that we have a phrasal verb, talk about, and the verb discuss. So which do you think is more formal?
今日また要するに持って回った言い方を作ることだよね。
If you said discuss is more formal, you're right. Try to avoid using the verb get too much. If you don't want to sound too informal, use alternatives like receive or understand if possible. Now look at this. Why is the first example more formal?
話す気を使ってないから。This is短縮形って英語なんて言うんだっけお願い、Google。焦点とか。
By not using contractions like I'm, doesn't, and I've, we make the writing more formal. Also, did you notice how in the very informal email, ASAP was used instead of as soon as possible? Using abbreviations like this, or info instead of information, is very informal. The last thing that you might have noticed is that in the informal email, some words were left out. Instead of saying, it'd be great, we can write great. Instead of, I'm writing about the meeting, we could just write about the meeting. So let's review what we've learned. We decide how formal to be based on who we are writing to. And we can make the language more formal by changing the vocabulary. Look at this table. This summarizes the ways we can change formality.
フレンチからっていうところが、さて、次は問題。成績をやるには8時間参加とかあれかな？リクエスト、アスク、聞くよりも要求する。What is more informal? Cheers. What is more neutral? よく使う、普通に使う方だから don't. 審査。Which is more informal? Do you want to? コーヒーでもいただけませんか？ああ。じゃあ、日本語だから。日本語の receive it. By the way, read it up. Which is more neutral? You want to ask? どうです？これいいでしょう？ 100% OK。
So now you know that to decide how formal you should be, you should ask the question, who am I writing to? But what about directness? Directness means saying something very clearly. Well, to decide how direct you need to be, you ask the question, what am I writing about? Let's take a look at some situations. If we're making a request and we think the answer will be yes, we can be direct. If we're making a request and we don't know what the answer will be, we should be indirect. For example, if I ask to borrow your stapler, would I be direct or indirect?
If I ask to borrow your stapler, would I be direct? ダイレクトだよね。オープンクローズです。イエスかノーでとか。
That's right. I'd be direct. I'd be very surprised if you said that I couldn't borrow your stapler. If we're making a request and it's something routine, normal, or not special, we can be direct. If we're making a request and it's something special or non-routine, we should be indirect. For example, if I request a catalog from a mail-order clothing company, would I be direct or indirect?
Like メールオーダー。キーとくださいっていうのをお願いする立場だからインダイレクトってことなのかな？ああ。
That's right. I would be direct. This is something routine. If we're making a suggestion and we think it will be acceptable, we can be direct. If we're making a suggestion and we don't know if it will be acceptable, we should be indirect. For example, if I suggest that we move our weekly meeting to 6 p.m. on Friday, would I be direct or indirect?
それはインダイレクト。こんな午後の金曜日6時だって。日本人だるまいし。
That's right. I would be indirect. I don't know if my suggestion would be acceptable. Actually, I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't be very happy with my suggestion. If we're giving a positive opinion, we can be direct. If we're giving a negative opinion, we should be indirect. For example, if I write that the length of your report is too short, would I be direct or indirect?
If I write the length of your report is too short, would I be direct? はっきり言うべきかどうかって感じだよな。 ネガティブだからインダイレクトでいいのかな。いいのか。
It would be better to be indirect in this particular case. If we're answering a request or a suggestion positively, we can be direct. If we're answering a request or suggestion negatively, we should be indirect. For example, if I say that I can meet you for coffee tomorrow, would I be direct or indirect?
普通にポジティブだからダイレクトでコーヒーに誘うってことだよね。
In this case, I would be direct. If I couldn't make it, I would be indirect. If we're giving good news, we can be direct. If we're giving bad news, we should be indirect. For example, if I'm writing that there will be no salary increase this year, will I be direct or indirect?
I am writing that there will be no salary increase this year. Will I be direct or indirect? No salary increase はやっぱりインダイレクトじゃないのかな。
Hopefully, I would be indirect in this situation. Great. So we've looked at the question, what am I writing about, to help us decide how direct we should be. But again, we need to know how we can change the language to be direct or indirect. Instead of changing the vocabulary, we can change the structure or grammar to make what we write indirect. Let's take a look at some examples. If you look at the second example, you can see that it's a question. In fact, it's a yes-no question. Using a yes-no question for something like a request is one of the easiest ways to make it more indirect. Now let's look at another example. What's the difference between the first sentence and the second? I wonder if you can attend the meeting. I was wondering if you could attend the meeting. The second one uses the past forms was wondering and could instead of wonder and can. When we're making requests and offers or using verbs like wonder or think, using past forms can make something sound more indirect, but we're still talking about the present time. And in this example, using the passive, I wasn't told, and avoiding you makes it more indirect. In this example, why does the second example sound more indirect? Using might and softeners like a little, a bit, or slightly can help avoid being too direct. Sometimes, by making the sentence longer, we can sound more indirect. Take a look at this example.
Sometimes, making the sentence longer, we can sound more indirect. Take a look at this example. そう。Can you give me とか。if it これだよね。
Good. So let's review the ways we can be indirect. Use yes-no questions. Use past forms could, would, wondered or was wondering, thought, in requests or invitations. Use passives and avoid you. Use softeners like a little or a bit and make the sentences longer.
Direct or indirect. Remember when we looked at the different situations to decide if we should be direct or indirect. Let's see if now you can also choose the best language to match this situation in this short case. I want to borrow your stapler. いや、こんなのこれで十分なんだよ。そんな丁寧に言う必要ないよねっていう。I want to request a catalog from a mail order course. I want to request a catalog. これで十分と。I want to start we moving our weekly meeting in 6時。金曜日の6時にやりたい。それはもう、頼むからやってくれませんかっていう感じ。I want to tell you that the length of your report is too short. リポートちょっと短いわね。 リと使って少しいいか。I want to tell you there will be a non-salary increase this year. E タイプ。多分なるようになりそうでっていう感じになると。送信、全部。ビルディングのライト E メール。8時間ごとに3回目で。前回は失敗したから、これさん成功出したい。Hector Houseman wants some information about the mini coffee maker from Coffee Bag. He finds the contact information for Nancy Prince on the Coffee Bag website. He writes the email to Nancy. Take the best option for each part of the email address. ミニコーヒーメーカークエスチョンっていういいよね。で、ここはまだ会ってない人だから少しDear Miss Friends。やりやすくするためには、これですね。ポイント。長え。これぐらいがちょっとニュートラルでしょう。インサリーで。なんでここにずれてるのかってのはあるけど。セコンドパントというクロージング不正解だった。もう一度試す。ヘクター・ハルスマン wants to ナンシー。ナンシー多分このマネージャーがね、そういう人だよね。Take the best opinion for each part of the email that writes. こちらがためにクエスチョン。Dear Miss Friends. First, これここまで OK。Second, となると、ここしか、このレベルでいいってことか。I took word hearing from クロージングが審査になくて、ベストリガーズ。いや、審査にだよ。なんで、ネームがずれてるんだ。これは、しかないとすると。やっぱりヘクターハスネームしか間違えてたけど、こっちの方なんだけど、なる気がするな。じゃあヘクターってする。 一応チェックして、ロジック、でも、ビルドライメール。G。コーヒーですよ。ピリオド。いやなし。いや、is です。いいですね。ファーストパート。これです。ここは、ここまで。いうのを要求。3セコンドパート。の、ここはまあ、早めに、近く上だし、インフォーマルに要求してもいいか。まあいいでしょう。客だし。どうせ貸したくないなぁ。じゃあ、こっちにするかな。ぐらい。お、クロージングは審査。ネーム。やっぱりフットハウスなんだよな。フルネームの方がいい。 総合すると、ミニコーヒーメーカークエスチョン。Dear Miss Friesen, I am interested in the mini coffee maker that I saw on your website. I have the following questions. Does it work overseas? Does it come in black? How can it be cleaned? Thank you for any information you can provide. I look forward to receiving your reply. Sincerely, Hector House. こんなもんだろうな。送信。くれた。クロージング不正解、ベストリガーズなんだ。そう。審査だけベストリガーズの方だったか。E メールライティング、ビジネスコミュニケーション。さて、ボキャブラリー。あっというコンビニ。ディスカストーク。はい、アプリセットプラス。インフォームテル。オポチュニティ。チャンス。パーミットレッド。プレビアスラスト。プロバイドキープ。フォーマルではことディスカスとか、あっというコンビネーションを使う。ユーザーに if やトーカーバーズなどを使えばいい。シンサリーは、インフォーマリティすぎるので、別にだもんね。ニュートラル、アンディフォン。バイドウェイ。FYY。サンクチアス。シングスタッフ両方から。それで、了解と。最後。This list is about the tone of emails. We learned about how formal and human you can be. How direct and indirect you are. Learning objectives. Will you distinguish between formal and human language? 違いね。distinguish between direct and indirect language. Choose the appropriate tone based on your relationship with your recipient in the context and request. だよねっていう書くのが OK と。
In this lesson, we'll look at how to start an email, what we write in the first sentence, and
ここは3週目のあれで、フォトテストが残ってるから、これは焦ります。時間的にいい時間だし、焦りましょう。あとはちょっとコーセラ版やめて、スターティ入るようになってない。カリキュラム、メニュー、プロファイル、キュラム、レスポンシブ。途中だからこれもやんないと。ここはいいのかな ?FF、これ。さてと。 Change an element relative position. CS treats each element as its own box, which is usually referred as CS box model. Block label items automatically start on them. Sync headings, paragraphs, and divs, while inner items switch between surrounding content, like images or spans. The default layout or elements in this way is called a normal flow of a document. A series of vast position properties are available. When the position of element is set to relative, it allows you to specify how CS should move it relative to its current position in the formal flow of pages. It pairs with CS offset property left or right on top or bottom. These say how many pixels percentage or EMs to move the item away from where it is normally positioned. The following example moves the path 2 pixels away from the bottom. Changing the element's position to relative does not remove it from the normal flow. Other elements around it still behave as if that item were in its default position. Which is giving you a lot of flexibility and power over visual layout. It's good to remember that no matter the position of elements, the underlying HTML markup should be organized and make sense when read from it. This is how to use with the visual impairment. Change position is relative and use this. 列にポジションリラティブ。トップに動きます。まあでも文章は変わらないよね。Move a relative pixel element with CS offset. The CSS offset of top, bottom, left, and right that blurs how far offset until relative right. Where it will sit in the normal flow of the document. Where offset the element away from a given spot, which moves the element away from the reference side effectively doubles. As usual in the last range, your top offset move to its level. Likewise, use the left offset to move an item to use CS offset move to looks to the right and 2 pixels. 例えば、トップのマイナス10ピクセルの16ピです。これでどうでしょう。で、わかるように。Next option, position property is absolute, which looks element in place relative to its parameter quality. Unlike the relative position, this removes element from the normal flow of the domain. So surrounding items ignite. The CS offset properties are used to adjust position. One nuance with absolute position is that it will be locked relative to its closest position. If we get at the position root the parent item, we don't using position relative, the browser will keep looking up the chain and ultimately result to the data. So part of its section. これが、ポジション、リラ、参考のために、リラ、トップライダーがトップ、0。これで、なんとかなるはずはない。アブソリュートだよねっていう、止まれた。これで実行すると、両方とも50ピクセルス。50。はいはい。Thank you. Click element to the browser window with fixed position. The next layer scheme that says was fixed position, which is a type of absolute position that locks an element relative to the browser window. Similar to absolute position, if it's used with the CSS offset properties and also removes element from the normal flow. ただ、no longer realize right position. When you clear some layer thousand. One key difference between fixed and absolute options is that one element will slip and move when to use the scroll. The navigation bar the code is available with an ID navbar changes its position to fix and offset itself. ナビゲーターのポジションをフィックスとして、ポジション、フィックス。コロン、レフト、ゼロ。これでやっても、この上についたまま動かないと。The next positioning to the position sets the float property of an element. Floating elements are removed from the normal flow document and pushed to either left or up. There. Parent elements. Which the give markup work to column layout. Its position and aside elements next to each other. Left and sample right. Right の float over right. ここを、例えば、コロン、レフト、ライト。 このサイトというと、二段組に表示されるってことだね。Change the positions of overlapping element with the z-index property. The element created in this markup will, by default, appear on the top of the alignments. However, the z-index property can specify the order of how elements are stacked on top of one another. It must be an integer I and higher value for the z-index property of an element above its higher those is lower value. つまり、例えば、ファーストに、Z バー、インデックス、この、U として、こうなる。0とすると、同じ1だと変わらない。2で変わると。Center an element result using the margin property. Another positioning technique is to center block element horizontally. One way to do this is to set margin to value of out. これ、マージンオートとすれば、この両方のマージンが広くなって、ボックスがセンターに置ける。Learn about complementary colors. Color theory and its impact and design its deep topic and only the basics are covered in follow challenges. On the opposite, color can draw attention to content, evoke emotions, or create visual harmony. Using different combinations of color can really change the look of a website. And Adobe sort of can go into picking a color palette that works with the content. The color wheel is a useful tool to visualize how colors relate to each other. It's a cycle when similar hues are reversed and different hues are faded. Two colors are opposite each other on the wheel. They are called complementary colors. These have characteristics that if they are combined, they cancel each other out and create a gray. However, when both side by side, these color appears by combining colors with mixed colors. Red, and this then outdated RYB found out. This is different premium colors, modern colors will use addictive RGB mode, like a computer screen, and the subtractive CMYK model. エリアモード、アメリカピックスで全然バックアップで、まあ、こうブルーツまで入るよね。 コミュルにして、L、Y、O で、ペースト。じゃあでも3時半だし、夜も遅いので、今日はここまでにします。見てる人はありがとうございました。ではでは。